Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a subject that's absolutely central to Indian social history, but one that our source material argues has been deeply misunderstood for centuries. We're going to be unpacking the book Varna, Jati Caste, to really get a handle on its challenging perspective.
Okay, so let's just jump right into the big question. Varna, Jati, and caste. Are they all the same thing? You hear these words used almost interchangeably, but the book we're looking at today says that this confusion is actually a huge fundamental error.
And to untangle this whole thing, the book argues you can't just look at the words in a vacuum. Nope, you have to go way back to the source code, the original philosophical operating system they came from, which it calls the Vedic open architecture. So the book presents ancient Indian society, not as just some random set of rules, but as a really intricate system. It was built on a complex metaphysical framework, one that was actually designed to balance individual growth with the needs of the entire society.
And at the absolute heart of this framework is this idea of two connected realms of existence. First, you've got the Vyavaharika. That's the world we see, touch, and feel, our everyday reality. But beyond that, there's the Paramarthika, this transcendent absolute reality. According to this worldview, the whole point of life is to navigate the physical world to eventually reach the transcendent one.
So, to guide you on that journey, the book explains that the Vedic system lays out these four universal goals for life. You've got material security, fulfilling your desires, and living a righteous life. And all of that is in pursuit of the ultimate goal, moksha, which is total liberation.
And here's the thing, achieving those goals wasn't just left up to chance. The book describes this really carefully designed social infrastructure. It combined your stage in life, called ashrama, with your role in society, or Varna, to create this clear path for both growing as a person and contributing to the community.
Now this table, this breakdown of the four Varnas, it really reveals a perspective you might not have seen. The book argues this was never a simple ladder of high and low, it was a system of distributed functions in society. And each role had its own unique balance of risk and reward. The focus was on your function, not some kind of inherent status.
So, if that was the original blueprint, how did this fluid system change so dramatically over time? Well, according to the book's analysis, that original open architecture, it definitely didn't stay that way.
The book actually charts this massive transformation across 7 distinct historical phases. It argues that the original system, which it claims was flexible and based on merit, started to harden over time. It points to foreign invasions and, this is the big one, colonial rule as the real turning points where all that flexibility was lost and a rigid, birth-based hierarchy was officially locked into place.
And this flowchart, wow, it really visualizes the book's central historical argument. It traces what the authors call a process of degradation. You can literally see the progression from that fluid, function-based Varna system to the more formal Jatis, and then finally to the rigid, birth-based caste system, which the book claims was basically a creation of European colonial rule that then morphed into a political tool.
And here it is. This is the crucial point the book makes. The whole idea of caste, as we think of it, this fixed, hereditary hierarchy, wasn't an indigenous concept. The authors argue it was a European framework based on their own ideas about race that they projected onto a much more complex and fluid Indian reality.
Okay, so those are some pretty bold claims, right? So what evidence does the book actually present to challenge that conventional narrative of this eternally rigid and oppressive system? Well, for starters, the book pushes back hard on the idea that Shudras were just laborers. Citing historical sources, it shows how people from the Shudra Varna held all kinds of diverse and powerful roles, from ruling huge empires like the Mauryas to being government ministers, and even becoming famous teachers of science and grammar.
Now check out this statistic cited in the book. It might really surprise you. And it comes directly from British colonial records. Around 1825, in the district of Madras, over 66% of the students in the local indigenous schools were from Shudra and other communities that would later get labeled as lower castes.
And that wasn't a fluke. This data, also from the source, shows that across the entire Madras presidency, Shudras and other communities often made up the majority of students, especially in the Tamil and Kannada-speaking areas. The book uses this to argue that a widespread indigenous education system was thriving long before the British came in and imposed their own. The book also kind of zooms out and argues that these caste-like social hierarchies are not exclusively a Hindu thing. It actually cites evidence of similar dynamics inside Indian Muslim communities. It talks about the struggles of Dalit Christians fighting discrimination within the church, and how these practices persist even in faiths that were founded specifically to reject the Varna system.
And this might be one of the most unexpected perspectives the book highlights. It's a quote from a 19th century French missionary, Abbé Dubois. And what's so ironic is that even though his whole mission was to convert Indians, he saw their social structure not as something oppressive, but as the very thing that gave India its cultural resilience and stability.
So after going through the book's core arguments and all the evidence it presents, what is the main takeaway here? What's the bottom line? It all really comes down to this. The book's central argument is that a dynamic social framework, one designed for diversity and function, was fundamentally misunderstood and then re-engineered by colonial administrators. They essentially flattened it into a static, simple hierarchy, a system, the authors argue, that was way easier for them to map, to census, and ultimately to control. And this whole re-examination of history leaves us with a really fascinating question for our world today. The book contrasts a social model designed to preserve distinct identities with the modern melting pot ideal that wants to merge them. And it forces us to ask a question that's relevant for every single society right now. How do you strike that perfect balance between preserving the unique identities that give communities meaning and fostering the social cohesion that holds a nation together?